Now we're on. Hey, Isaiah. All right, we're going to get started in just a moment. Mr. Moss will be joining us shortly, but he has asked us to proceed. I'm going to do as I normally do and invite everyone to turn off their cell phone. Because I would be the one to start ringing. They gave you my box. And John Lithgow's character. Mr. Feliciano, Dr. May, we good? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm really, really excited about this meeting for multiple reasons. One, because I'm excited about our board accountability system. I know that may sound kind of nerdish, but I'll take that. But also because we're being joined by our new superintendent, and I'm excited for the touches that she will place upon our accountability system, our strategic plan, and how she's going to move the numbers that we've made progress on in even further in the direction that we're looking to. So at this time, I'd like to say welcome, Dr. Watts, and also invite her to bring a few comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. Likewise excited to be here. As I have committed to in my 100-day plan, much of the next 100 days is really about listening and learning. So this is also a learning opportunity, even in preparation for this meeting, a learning opportunity. And today we will go deeper into that. Our accountability system and how we hold ourselves accountable is really the contract that we have with the community. It's the receipts that we are being good stewards of their resources, and it's also our commitment to pay it forward for the children that we serve here in the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System. So I'm excited to get started. I'm excited to continue to learn and to refine our work so that we can truly take stock of where we are. My mom always told me to measure twice and cut once. So this is the measurement aspect of that, so that when we walk into classrooms with kids and when we get up every morning, we only have to cut once and we get it right.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Watts. So now I know I have another sewing partner.
No, I said my mama said.
I'm glad to, thank you for your comments. Glad to have this meeting. I'm really excited about this meeting because we're going to do an overview of the Way Forward 2026 strategic plan and also the DAS-RMI. And so for anyone who is not present, who may want to know in the future, when did we lay out the plan of all the things that we were going to measure this year? This is the committee meeting that you want to go back and look at the recording for. We often have an audience like this, but it's really, really important work. And oftentimes, folks who are commenting in our meetings really want to know in our regular board meetings the kind of things that we're talking about in this meeting. So please tell that. Look at this video to see how we're measuring our progress. And so with that, I will ask for, we do have regrets from Dr. Mosley, and Mr. Moss is en route and will be joining us shortly. But we do have a quorum to approve our agenda and our minutes. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion we approve. I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Any discussion or additions to the agenda as it's been printed? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposers the same, and we have no abstentions. Okay, minutes from our March 28th Board Accountability Committee meeting have been provided. They were also sent in digital form. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our March meeting.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Any corrections, modifications, or discussion of the minutes from March 28th, 2023? Okay, hearing none, we can approve those by acclamation. All right, awesome. And now we have our presentation. Thank you so much.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Hoskins Brown, you're absolutely correct. These videos are memorialized forever thanks to Stacy Jennings and Kirk Hediger, who figured out how to get this done for each of our committee meetings and the board meetings. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about the Way Forward 2026 strategic plan and the DAS-REMI. The DAS-REMI, for our audience that's out there, is the district accountability system, reporting, monitoring, and evaluating instrument that we used for our stakeholders. The strategic plan is a living document we use to communicate the school board goals and objectives. It establishes the vision, mission, and a set of values to follow. It helps define the areas of focus and priorities for the administration and ensures that employees, board members, and stakeholders are all working towards common goals. In looking at the screen, we have been on the Passport to Excellence strategic plan for about a decade. From that plan, we transitioned over to a one-year tactical navigation plan during the pandemic years because we shifted our focus more towards safety of staff and students and security of our systems. And we had to figure out, how do we keep our organization operating during this dark time period? Coming out of the navigation plan, we worked on and were successful in completing the Way Forward 2026 strategic plan. The strategic plan takes into account the Swiss performance contract, which is the Georgia flexibility option performance contract that was adopted in 2015. It stands for Strategic Waiver School System. The CLIP plan, which is the Consolidated LEA Improvement Plan, that has an acronym within an acronym. The LEA is the local education agency. And the CTAE, Perkins 5 plan, which covers the pathways and the workforce development that we have in place. And that's career, technical, agricultural education. In this presentation, I will cover the work that leads to the current strategic plan, where we are today, and our plan for moving forward. There are 4 key phases defined when we started the planning and outlining of the strategic planning process. There are the pre-planning phase, the SWOT analysis phase, and what I call the VIMOSA phase, which is vision, mission, objective, strategies, and action items.
We needed another acronym, Mr. Feliciano. Okay, thank you for that.
So that's the development phase, and then the final is the implementation phase. In the pre-planning phase, one thing to note, there are many different strategies or strategic planning models that are available to use. It was important to ensure that the one selected was appropriate and provided thoughtful process on linking all the components together for a K-12 environment. To assist and guide us through this process, we contracted with GSBA and GLSI, which is the Georgia School Board Association, and the Georgia Leadership Institute for School Improvement. What sold us was GSBA's strategic model aligned with Cognia's 5 standards for quality schools. So why is this so important? Because the 5 standards of quality schools is the foundation for Cognia's accreditation process. And it just happens that we are pursuing district-wide accreditation through Cognia. The two focus groups created was an internal focus group and an external focus group. The internal consisted of employees, while the external group consisted of parents, business partners, agencies, and other stakeholders. The planning team consisted of a diverse group comprised of district and community members, so it was split 50-50. On the district side, we included central leadership, 2 board members, principals, teachers, and students. And on the community side, we included business partners, parents, agencies, and other stakeholders. The action team consisted of senior leadership only. On a needs assessment phase, this is when the focus group meetings and workshops occurred for the SWOT analysis. And SWOT, for those that are viewing this, are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat. A community survey was also conducted to capture a greater audience for the planning process. In the development phase, this is where the core work occurred. I also referred this as the strategic convergence phase because it required alignment of the CTAE, the CLIP, the SWIS, and major initiatives that are occurring throughout the district. Once GSBA and GLSI collected and analyzed all the information, it was presented to the school board, and during this workshop, they also discussed and collected feedback on the vision, mission, and guiding principles. The planning team, facilitated by GLSI, reviewed all the work conducted by the focus groups and the workshops and the information collected through the surveys. They reviewed and worked on the vision, mission, guiding principles, priority goals, and started to work on the performance objectives. A cabinet workshop was held to combine and prepare the work for the next stage, which led to the action team. The action team, consisting of senior management, reviewed the priority goals and worked on finalizing the objectives, creating performance measures, targets, strategies, and action items. In the last phase, the implementation phase, there are 3 artifacts that were created. The first one was the board strategic plan. This is the one-pager that we're accustomed to seeing. The second was the board strategic map, which lists the goals and the objectives. And then the final document was the administrative DAS REMI. One of the things we wanted to make sure was that this was not put on a shelf, but it became a living document. In support of the continuous improvement process, we bring the DAS REMI to the Board Accountability Committee yearly for review, updates, and adjustments. The strategic plan pyramid is what you see on the screen. It is a visual that shows the work of the school board and that of the administration, from strategic all the way down to operational. Strategic planning covers the vision, mission, guiding principles, priority goals, and performance objectives. The operational planning covers the performance measures, performance targets, strategies, and actions. The administrative operational plan is the DAS REMI, which focuses on the district work that is going on every year. This is the mechanism used to implement the strategic plan. The DAS REMI is directly aligned with the school board's strategic plan and includes components that show the strategies in place, the progress made, and the reporting timeline. As you can see, this was not a short and quick process. It took more than a year to complete the work, starting in January of 2021 to the board adoption on September 8th of 2021. We held strategic planning activities every month. After board adoption, the action team continued working on building the DAS-REMI to support the strategic plan. You can also see the flags identifying the CTA Perkins 5 deadline and the district CLIP deadline. Here are some pictures of the group meetings that were held and workshops throughout the process. On the bottom right, you can see our 2 board members there that participated in the planning team. It was Dr. Tanya Howard Hall and Anise Grabowski. They participated, and I believe there were 2 students. Is that correct? I think there were 2 students that were there. So what was the outcome of a years-long work? What you see on the screen is the work, working with the communications department, Stacy Jennings. They created a visual of the work compiled with the vision, mission, and guiding principles. This information is posted in the board's conference room. It is posted on our public website, and it has been sent to all our schools. Key items on this screen that I'd like to point out. On the vision, one of the things we talked most about was productive citizens. We knew we wanted all students to be prepared for success, but one of the things we were seeing during this time period was a lot of people taking advantage of others because of the pandemic. They were charging excessive for masks, they were charging excessive supply chains, all the prices were going up. So the team wanted to know, how do we incorporate to ensure we have graduating students that are part of the community, that care for the community, and that participate in the community. So that word productive citizen bubbled up and became part of the vision statement. On the mission, there were 2 key areas that we talked about. The team talked about the school system cannot do it alone. That was talked about a lot. It needs support from agencies. It needs support from families. It cannot do everything that a child needs, whole child development by itself. So the word together came up and became the first word in the mission statement. The second part is at the end of the mission statement, for all. It could easily have said students, but after talking about the mission statement, lifelong learning does not just apply to students, it also applies to staff. We have professional development that's constant, it's ongoing for our teachers, for our staff members, for our administrators. We have opportunities to educate our business partners. We have opportunities to educate our parents. So it's not just one group, but all group that we focus on educating. So that's why it says, together we ignite and foster lifelong learning at the highest levels for all. And then the guiding principles were also, all 7 were updated. So on the screen, what you see is a balanced strategic map from school achievement to resource stewardship. The 4 goals are broad and cover every aspect of the administration. It's important for all employees to feel they are part of the strategic plan. So the priority goals that you see there, they're supported by 13 performance objectives that are more specific to the work to be done. This is considered to be half of the strategic planning process. The second half, which is the operational work, is what we call the DAS-REMI. And the DAS-REMI actually shows the measures, the targets, and the strategies. So on the screen at the top, you see the priority goals. On the left-hand side, you see the performance objectives. Then you see the performance measures that have been created, the baseline, the targets and actual for each year, future year that's listed. Focusing more on a specific objective, you can see the performance objective, the measures, and the years, is the strategies. So one of the limitations we have with the existing online platform is that you can't easily see all the components together, okay? GSBA has recognized that limitation and has made updates to their platform. So we will be in the process of building out the new DAS REMI on their new platform as we move forward.
Mr. Feliciano, you're talking about how this is displayed in Assembly?
Yes.
Okay. And is there, I just didn't try it recently, is there a function where you can do a display and then export it as a PDF to create your own reports?
Yes, you
Okay.
can export it. When you print the report function, it does print to a PDF, and then you can see the strategies in the report. But when you're looking at the screen that shows your balanced scorecard, it does not show the strategy along with it.
I see. Thank you.
Another component of the strategic planning process in DAS REMI is the reporting matrix. The matrix lists the goal on the left-hand side, you see there, the performance measure, and you see the months and the specific reports that are being provided. At the bottom of the reporting matrix, you'll see the legend, which is either a division report that you'll see, a superintendent cabinet report, superintendent's notes, a board accountability committee report, an executive summary report, informal board or regular board meeting report. These are placed on the matrix so that anyone in the community can see when is this report going to be provided and to who will it be provided. So what determines the placement on this matrix? You know, that's an important thing. Every year we review the matrix with the Board Accountability Committee. We do move things around depending on what impacts these reports. It could be at the state level where the state releases the information later, or they can release the information sooner based on previous years. Then we can make adjustments to when we can report on that data. It also depends on the opening and closing schools. So one of the things we want to make sure is that staff is not distracted, that they're focusing to make sure schools are first day ready. Or when we're closing school, we want to make sure that we record all our graduation correctly. So we have all our analysts focusing on helping the high schools, making sure that data is as accurate as possible. So you can see the X's there during certain time periods. Those are the periods the administration focuses all its efforts on other events. As part of our continuous improvement process and meeting Cognia's requirements, these measures are considered our KPOs, which are key performance outcomes. You have GMAS, which is our high-stakes testing for grades 3 and up. They cover 4 subject areas. You have CCRPI, which is the Georgia statewide accountability system, consisting of 4 or 5 components. You have the SWIS, the strategic waiver school system that we report on, and the status of our schools. We have the state charter schools, which we release the charter Chevron reports that are based on 7 domains. And you have the internal audit report that focuses on improving district processes and procedures. So now we talked about how we got here. We're going to talk about what we're doing today. So we will be working to update the public website to show the connections between each of the components of this strategic plan. From vision to strategy, we want to make it easier to understand by all our stakeholders. In addition, we will be reviewing the language and measures to ensure that our community members easily understand them. We want to make sense and make sure they can tell what is going on each stage of the plan. The reporting timeline, as I mentioned before, is something we review yearly to ensure reports and presentations are provided in a timely manner. So we are reviewing those. One addition we will be adding is the superintendent's note report on CSI, TSI school designations. So that'll be added to the continuous improvement process as a KPO. So moving forward, on this slide, this is our plan with the superintendent's 100-day entry plan. We will be incorporating the superintendent's 100-day into the DAS-REMI, specifically 3 key priorities: literacy as the North Star, transforming underperforming schools, stakeholder engagement. The school board will have an opportunity for continuing discussing priorities and strategies during the upcoming August 17th, 18th board retreat. We look to update the DAS-REMI once the superintendent's 100-day plan is completed, the information compiled, analyzed, and ready for execution. Because of our unique situation, the DAS-REMI can return to the board accountability in November for review and discussion. So this concludes the presentation. Hopefully it was sufficient to cover how we got to where we are today, the different components of the strategic plan, what we're planning to do, and how we're incorporating the superintendent's 100-day plan.
Thank you, Mr. Feliciano. Welcome, President Moss.
Sorry for being late, guys.
We're glad to have you.
Thanks.
So I have questions, but let's, you do too. So let's start, questions?
I don't know if this is necessary, and we may discuss this at our retreat, but has the team started evaluating whether or not we will have recommendations coming forward regarding the percentage, the weight percentage that GMAS will play, given the state board's recent decisions to allow some local autonomy over the percentage of GMAS scores?
Right now, what the state has proposed is a 10% weight for final, to be added to the final course grade. It used to be 20. Then when the pandemic hit, they moved it to 1%. And now with the adjustment and input that has been provided to the state board, they settled on 10%.
I thought it was that the local district could use either 10 or 20%. Is it?
Now, what the language says is that they recommend 10%. However, the local district can raise it higher.
Okay, okay. So is that something we'll discuss at some point or get a recommendation from the superintendent at some other point? Okay. I just was, since that's kind of hot off the presses, I was curious and it was on my mind.
But David, I want to make sure that I'm accurate. What she's referring to doesn't really play into our accountability system. That's more along the lines of
No.
how it counts for each individual student's report card grade.
That counts towards high school courses.
Right.
So the end of course test, which carries a weight that the State Department sets. So right now, the recommendation is 10%. It's what we're looking at. So we can certainly have a discussion internally to see if we need to raise that.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not directly related to this, but because it is such a widely referenced metric that, you know, people go to a lot, it just seemed, I don't know, relevant to this conversation in some way. That's my only question for now. I'll reserve it.
Thank you. Mrs. Hall?
Mr. Feliciano, if I were to ask you what stakeholders you feel our strategic plan and DAS-REMI has the most impact on, who would you say? Would you say the students, the teachers, the board members? Who's most impacted by all of this work?
I think I could honestly say those that are engaged in improving the education process. When we selected the focus groups, we wanted to make sure we had advocates for education from a diverse group, and they participated in talking about education and what they felt was valuable to them in moving forward for the district. So it wasn't just a random selection. It was very strategic to ensure we had business partners that were engaged with the school system. We engage agencies that we partner with to help our students and families. And we have parents like the PTA parents, school council, those that are actively engaged.
So how do you feel we as board members could be more proactive in getting this strategic plan as a working document? I know a lot of my constituents, if I were to ask them, what do you think about our strategic plan? What? You know, so this is a lot of work, a lot of data, a lot of time. I'm just trying to see how we can infuse it with a little more activity from the public so we know it's really having an impact.
That's a very good question, Ms. Hall, I think, in looking, because we live it, right?
Yeah.
So
We're
to
in our own
us,
bubble,
it's
and we-
easy.
Right.
And it shed a light when the questions came up on the disconnect between the components. And I know we need to do a better job in improving how these components connect and then make it easier for those that do not operate with strategic planning to understand what does it mean, how does it impact them, and how does it tell me what the school system is doing to move forward. And that's something that I'll be pulling a team together to make sure we work on and then bring back to the Board Accountability Committee.
And if I could add, and to even simplify for the public, the strategic plan and the DOS REMI report is simply the report card for the district, right? It is a measure of how we're doing. I will also add that many of these things are lagging indicators, so they don't necessarily suggest how we're doing today. They suggest how we were doing. But the report card, if you'll kind of go with that analogy, is an opportunity to say, here's where we are. Now, how do we pivot? How agile can we be? What, for the board, what are the policies and conditions you all create so that we can improve our grade? Or what are we celebrating? What did we actually attain that we want to celebrate? And then what actions did we take that led to that success? So just a simple way for the public, it's the same way you treat your child's report card. When your child comes home with his or her report card, you open it up and you have a conversation with your child about what worked and what didn't work and what steps are we going to make to improve and what are we celebrating.
Let me ask the chairman, do you think it would help if we added somewhere district report card? If we simplified it so that instead of me asking them, you know, what do you think about our DOS REMI? Did you look at our report card? What do you think? Because right there, that'll include thousands of more people.
So I think the report card is a strong analogy that says, okay, this is how we're assessing ourselves. But I think we need to do a better job of selling what the pieces are. So yes, sorta. That's the answer. Yes, sorta. And the reason is yes, sorta is that, where is it? All right. So the strategic plan is one thing. The map has the goals, and the goals have the things that we are going to attempt to do aligned with 4 areas. Most of the public doesn't even know that every month our agenda is aligned with these 4 strategic goals. So there is this scaffolding where we're measuring in these areas. But to your point, most people don't know that in the budget book that's in the public library, that after we pass the budget, there is a long, long bulleted list of all of the things that the district said that it did under each one of those areas, which probably not a lot of people are not going to read. So I appreciate that the recent feedback that we got about the Board Accountability Committee website, the DAS-REMI, and the strategic plan not being presented in a way that if you were looking for that as somebody who was intensely interested, you would not find those things and know that they're all the same thing. But I think, to your point, a community member is not going to go to the library and pull up page 55 through 80 of the budget book and read the descriptive list of the things that we said that we did. We give the reports during the year the way that they are spaced, even though you've just presented the calendar. The community doesn't know that these reports are part of a year-long accountability exercise. So I think we need help with what we call in my profession scientific communication. Like, I can tell you why oyster reef restoration stabilizes the shoreline, improves water quality, and does all these things, but you don't want to hear me talk about it in that way. I need to put it together in such a way that the average person understands how having an oyster reef around is a good idea. We need to work on simplifying and making our message succinct, whether it's a short YouTube video or we used to do infographics on particular parts of our data. Now, y'all remember, I was not a fan of the infographics. I really wanted the reports. But the infographics were things that parents can pull up. So there needs to be a more user-friendly interface that instead of all of this material looking like it does for those of us who live in it, it needs to be something that can be easily picked up by somebody who's just walking by, and they can get it and understand it and be directed to something thicker if they want more information. So I agree with you completely.
Yeah, and I think we would have a lot more cheerleaders because we do have, we have a lot of detractors, but we have a lot of people out there who are cheering for us. And if they understood more and better, and we're talking to our teachers today and tomorrow about teaching with clarity. So again, simply making things more simple, making them clear and easy to understand, that's going to help us so that, because I am tired of hearing people say, oh, I'm thinking about moving to Savannah, but I don't know if my kid's going to go to public school or private, let's get our message out there better. And this is a very good document to do if we can clarify it and simplify it enough so people really understand what we're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, thank you for your report. When looking at the balanced scoreboard, could you talk a little about what we are measuring? Are we measuring students performing on grade level? Are we measuring student growth, or a combination of the both?
It is a combination of the both. I believe, let me go back. I can show you this measure here. As you can see, we have 4 performance measures on the screen. The top 2 are based off of GMAS scores, and then the bottom 2s are based on iReady assessment scores. So we do use a combination of the 2 to track student performance.
Right, because that's really important, because in the spring, the public, they don't analyze the iReady scores, it's the GMAS. And GMAS scores do not focus on growth. It focuses more on grade level.
Meeting the standards for that particular grade level.
And that's what we're really focusing on. Also, what can we do to make this document more family-friendly or community-friendly? Because as you said, together we ignite. And we do have a parental involvement, parental engagement piece in here. And typically with parental engagement, we focus on the number of participants and the number of events, but what can we do to really make it to the point that it makes a difference with academic achievement, to show an actual impact on academic achievement as opposed to participating in events and showing up for events?
Yeah, I think it's important to show the growth, just like you said. When you look at this, it's pretty plain, right? Unless you know numbers, you're really not going to get excited about it. So we do need to create visuals that can communicate to parents, communicate to our stakeholders that are non-data people to understand how the district is performing and how the district is progressing. That's very important. I know we spent a lot of time talking about formative assessments versus summative assessments, the difference between the two. And it's very important. It's important to know the difference between the two. So staying away from the technical and getting more to visuals to show our strategic plan, our strategies, our performance measures, what is it that's important to us that we're monitoring and looking at, I think we could do that. Yes.
We're in operations, which is where we normally get. But since we're suggesting mechanisms, I think there is a model from Delaware Sea Grant on how they communicate science information called 20-second science. And they'll talk about anything from microplastics to anything like that. I think we should consider that everyone is not wanting to read this content. Although we really, exalt literacy and we want people to pull down reports, we want them to go into assembly, we want them to read and interpret a histogram or a figure on an infographic. I think we have a really talented comms team, communications team. Are there ways for us to elevate awareness of our strategic plan using the really good job we've done around social media with, not a lot of effort. I guess the effort is getting that technical message into a couple of sentences that can go into our district social media to make people interested in how we are measuring our progress. I mean, just because it is educational science, we don't have to make it all sciencey so that no one wants to hear about it. It can be engaging.
So one of the things that we're doing as we look at a redesign of central office is really talking about how we bolster our communication and branding efforts and making sure we have the departments, David's department, Kurt's department, working hand in hand so that we can simplify the language. The way we're set up and have been operating doesn't necessarily lend itself to that, but that is a part of that evaluation process of central office staff and our org chart to make sure exactly what you're saying, the words exactly, actually come to life.
President Moss.
Here's a perfect example. So I'm looking at back to the balanced scorecard. So if I'm Joe Q Public and I look at this, the first thing I'm going to say is, now wait a minute. Up here you're saying 44% and down here you're saying 70%. Unless we spell out to the public what that means, I think part of that, I know that in our informal next month, we're going to talk to the public a lot about GMAs and letting people know exactly what GMAS is. If I'm Joe Q Public, I don't know the difference between GMAS and iReady. What I see conflicting numbers. So it's that kind of clarity, I think, is needed, and that kind of education. And, that's, going back to the board, that's, using social media. Maybe we do a social media campaign on GMAS scores are coming out. This is what they mean. Okay? Or the fact that we use our, Joe Q Public doesn't know what iReady is. So we need to explain to Joe Q Public, what is iReady? And why do we use iReady? And does iReady conflict with GMAS? How they work together. And it's, again, at the end of the day, it's all communication. And the other thing, and I've said it before and I'll say it 5,000 times, the public doesn't get acronyms. Okay, we have to spell it out to them. If I'm Joe Q Public, I don't know what a DOS REMI, I don't know what a CSI, a TSI, or MCI, or, I don't know that. So, and I know we have some place on the website, I guess, that we do that. But if I'm just looking at it, I don't know. So let's do a better job of, talking people.
I think you raise a really good point, Mr. Moss, because there are some parents that dig into all this, but there's a classism in our communication where we pay better attention to people who dig into the acronyms and pull down the reports, and we don't invest in, it's like, I don't think it's intentional.
Right.
But we do have some, here we go with this term again, implicit biases. We have some biases in the way that we are communicating, such that if you're a parent that digs into this information, then you are going to get top-notch customer service because you're talking to us in the language that we work in. But if you are a parent that's not communicating in that language, you may or may not get what you need. Because you may not be conversant. You know exactly what you need. Your child comes home every day. You know what they need and what they want, and you know that there are some tools to help you get there. But if you don't know the language to ask for it, or provide that feedback to the teachers or the AP or the principal, then you may not get it. And that's just, like you said, a bias in how we're communicating, because we throw out some acronyms, and if you don't grab onto the one that fits you, maybe, you don't get all of what is available to you.
And my
Ms.
fear-
Hall,
my
Ms.
fear
Grabowski.
that it's not most of our parents who even get it, who are the ones who we're communicating with at that high level. It's people who don't necessarily even have students in the school system who delve into that and get all, nerdy and wonderful about it, and they don't impact any kids at all. So, again, I'm looking at the common man here. We've got to get it clarified for him and her. But I'd like to ask you, do you have the staff to do that? Because I know you guys are worked out. So how do we do this with our?
I think, it's really thinking out of the box, because we live this 24/7, 365 days. This is what we do. It takes a different perspective, and I like the idea of working closer with the communications department, because they're in tune to the community, and working together, they can give us that separate perspective to say, that doesn't make sense. That language is too technical that I can't even understand. So I think it is important working together with the communications department to come up with a solution that we can present to our stakeholders.
Ms. Grabowski?
Well, I know you haven't asked your question.
No, all my questions have,
So I think it's all really great discussion. I think one of the things, as I, look at the balanced scorecard in front of us, it's a lot of words. And it doesn't really, I don't think it speaks to the specificity of our district. I mean, this kind of looks like it could be from anywhere. And so it leads me to think that, and this kind of goes to what you were just talking about with the platform that we're using on our website, as fabulous as those of us that want to geek out on data love that we can pull all the reports and everything's hyperlinked. I don't want us to feel like I think we need to maybe flip the way that we are thinking about this potentially, and what is the message we're trying to communicate, and what's the tool we need to be able to communicate it, versus trying to say, this is the tool we have, how do we make it work? Because when I look at this and I see the strategies on the right, they don't even mesh with the performance measures that are in the middle. And to me, I'm like, how does this make sense? So I think, sometimes I called Mr. Feliciano earlier with an issue, a technical issue. And I stepped away from it for about an hour because I was like, you know what? I just got to get this out of my head. I went back and was able to solve it. It was just one of those things that we get so in the weeds that, and maybe it's that parent group, maybe it's we have some amazing communication professionals in our community as well that are not embedded in the district and doing this day to day. Maybe we reach into that community and ask them for some, how do we communicate this from a layman's term or a layman's perspective? So I think there's all sorts of ways that we can do that. It all takes time. And I realize you have lots of other stuff you're trying to communicate too. But I am excited about this conversation because I think the more that we can do to convey information clearly, the better we are all served. I am very grateful that you brought that section from our budget book. Because it's also a reminder to me that that's in there. But I think that, and we've started doing our wonderful annual report each year, which I think is fantastic. Maybe there's a way to mesh those two, or we can't do all of that because then our annual report is 50 pages long. And I think the annual report probably pulls from a lot of that. But is there a way to be able to take our annual report and put the report card in there with it in some way? And then the last comment I'll make is, I think we also have to be realistic and transparent about the areas where we are challenged, the areas where we are struggling. It's really easy for our annual report to say, look at all the great, wonderful things we're doing. We're doing lots of great, wonderful things, and we have to absolutely celebrate those. But maybe there's something there that says, and here's what's next.
Right.
Here's where we know we have challenges to face, and here's what we're going to do it. We're going to focus on, the 1, 2, 3, or whatever that is. And it also gives, I think that helps to build confidence and transparency that we are recognizing the challenges that we face not only as a district but also as a community, and allows for us to be able to hopefully expand the conversation beyond, no, wait, we're doing everything, great, we are, but to Ms. Hall's point, there are people that are like, you're just saying, I don't know, I think that's something worth exploring. So hope all that made some sense.
I received it, and I want to look at this top row to try and illustrate some of what I think I heard. So is everybody seeing this slide on these screens, on the large screens?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the top row of this report card, we have the performance objective, which is aspirational. That's who we want to be. So when we're looking at just this top row, we have to think about who's looking at this. Is this a parent? Is this a board member? Is this a teacher, a staff member? Is this a superintendent? Who's looking at this row? So under the performance measure, that part informs the standard. The standard is 520, okay? That may or may not be what a parent or external stakeholder is looking for. They're going to look at they're possibly, and this is an exercise that looking at data, let me back up a little bit. Sometimes to look at data and for everyone to see the trends in the data, you just got to put it on the wall and everybody sit in a chair and just look at it. Data teams at the different schools do this all the time. When my master's students have been working on the same data for weeks and weeks and their brain is turned to mush, we just put it all on the wall, we get a chair, we get some coffee, and we just look at it. What does that say? So to me, this row is saying, we want 3% improvement every year. That's what a parent may want to know. What are you aspiring to? We want to get 3% better every year for 3 years. How are you going to do it? We're going to do it through the curriculum. That is something you can distill down to two sentences. Now, it might be good for them to know that we, from the different points of view from where we sit, Dr. Watts may want them to know, okay, we're using 520. She may want that to be in the messaging. what we think they're going to take from the messaging and the parts that we need to, simplify and pull out, that's something I think that is what you're going to do in this communications approach. But sometimes when we're looking at data, we're looking at it for what is valuable to us and not necessarily what is going to be valuable to the end user. And I think that's a process that will help us simplify the messaging, because some people are hoarders, and some people let things go. I like to hoard data. I want every little bit of information. But if you're going to communicate a simplified message, you can't do that. You're going to have to let some stuff go, oversimplify, and let people to come back and ask you a question about that. So I appreciate this discussion, and I trust that this is already, obviously, this conversation was already happening with leadership, and I'm glad that we are aligned, that the committee is aligned with leadership. Based on what you said about when we're going to see this again, we normally see the DAS REMI in October, and we approve in October, and that's not going to happen, and that's fine. But from what you said, the 100 days process will go through. We'll meet in August. In November, there'll be a review of the draft by the committee. The committee will respond to it, and then that means first read by the board wouldn't be until December, and then second would be January. Is that a timeline you're looking at, or are you looking to compress the things that happen between the end of the year to get it approved before the end of the year? Or have you not talked about that
Your timeline
yet?
sounds about right, because usually when the board accountability meets right before the packets go out for the December board meeting. So if there are no changes that need to be done, it could go to the board in December for the first read.
Okay. That just sounds kind of long for you, Madam Superintendent. So I'm speaking this out now in the universe in case we need to schedule a Board Accountability Committee meeting earlier so that we can sign off on it earlier and get it to the whole board earlier.
Well, we do meet in October. There is a Board Accountability Committee in October and November before the year ends. I chose November to give us sufficient time. However, if we do accelerate and we make the changes, we can certainly bring it to the October Board Accountability Committee meeting.
Okay. I think we can just look to see what the recommendation is coming from the superintendent, and we'll receive it and respond with as much flexibility as we can. Because you don't want to rush, a thought process as important as this, but you also don't want to be approving something for this year 6 months into the year. So I'm confident y'all will work that out, and you'll let us know what you need from us.
Mr. Feliciano, do you know, I found out, I'm around a lot of young kids, and I found out they like knowing what their Lexile score is. So this whole 520 thing, well, I'm at 520, but I want to be at 580. That's something we could really, push and work on. I guess when they go to take a book out in the library at school, a media specialist steers them towards whatever their Lexile is. And if it's a book I really want to read, but I'm not at that Lexile, it's kind of difficult. Although I personally don't like that. If I want to read that book, let me struggle through it. But I think we need that innate curiosity of kids and numbers that, I wonder if everybody in here now knows what their Lexile score is, but kids like that. So let's think of how our communications team could help us with that.
Awesome. Mr. Moss?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, as far as our goals are concerned, if you look at the superintendent's 100-day entry plan, transforming underperforming schools, I think we need to have goals set there. And I think that needs to be woven into the strategic plan. Stakeholders, what we came to realize this year, I mean, we've already known, is we have a diverse community. We have non-English speakers. And I think part of our strategic plan is how we are working with those communities and what are our goals there? You know, what are our communication goals? What are our academic goals? And, you know, so I think we need to look at this whole thing in light of what is going on now. You know, I believe the strategic plans are living, breathing things, and as we progress, new things come along. So I would really love for you to look at that. So.
Thank you.
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Howard Hall?
This won't be long. As I was alluding to earlier about family engagement, you know, we educate our students, but we really have to focus on educating the community as well as our families, because everybody in Chatham County should know what Lexile scores are. And so if the parent understands it, the community understands it, that will help the child to understand it more and to improve those Lexiles. So the language that we're using in schools, we need to be sure to educate the community and parents as well. And that's a part of the parent engagement I was saying, as it says, together we. So we can really do this as a community.
Love it.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Grabowski.
Mr. Moss's comment made me think about, you know, we're looking at our transforming our underperforming schools. How do the individual school improvement plans fit into both our strategic plan and the DASRME? Or do they?
Good question. I'll let Ms. Ball Oliver answer that question.
So, to add another acronym, our SIPs, our school improvement plans, are aligned to this as well. So when our schools are looking at their data, they're focused on those areas that they're seeing in the district's overall strategic plan. And if you notice in the strategic plan, of course, we address literacy and numeracy, which is where you'll find a lot of the focus. Again, you'll see in the high school plans graduation rate, as well as looking at student growth, because they examine that as well. So what we did go back and challenge our schools with, and then our associates and senior officers and other personnel work with them, is making sure that the goals they selected were aligned to what was in the way forward in our plan as a district. So we did have to go back and do some revamping a couple of years ago to make sure that everything was fitting together and that they were actually utilizing this plan to help drive their plan, but also making sure that their needs assessment and their data was a core part of that.
So then, does the report card from our individual schools feed into our district report card?
So I'm going to let the data expert answer that, but if I think about the way that we answered, we talk about the system, no.
Okay, and that was
Not
kind of
in the
my.
sense that we've been discussing,
Right,
no.
right, because that's. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're talking about, does it like, in terms of, I guess I need to let Mr. Feliciano, because I'm thinking about it from a technology standpoint,
they
and you
do
may be
not
asking
feed
from a
each other.
different.
The school improvement plans that are required, if those that are required by the state, they're directly entered into the state platform. So we looked at, is there a way that we can capture that information and make it part of our plan? But we didn't want to create a double keying system.
Right.
And we couldn't export the information from the state platform. So it wasn't user-friendly for us to do that. So I told them, continue just to upload it to the State Department, track your school improvement plans. They do a comprehensive needs assessment. They do strategies. They measure the measures that they have selected that they're going to focus on, whether it's professional development, literacy, numeracy, community engagement. those items they list out. So those plans do come downtown for review.
So yes, so the associates and those persons actually review those plans with the schools, and then they have to build out 45-day action plans that further drill down into what's your plan for attaining those strategies, and then they examine the data so that when you are not reaching that goal or you are not on a trajectory to reach that goal, then what's the pivot?
And I guess I'm asking the question from the perspective of if the role of 208 is to support our schools, does looking at the individual school data collectively help the district to better understand what and you may do it in a different way, but just trying to kind of connect the pieces between our 55 educational facilities and the district as a whole, and then how that kind of all, I guess, meshes together.
It's changed over time how we have done it. So we used to have those discussions in the full board meeting when we had all of the school data and all of the demographic data. We moved into talking about it more into in this meeting. And doing it via the Chevron reports. And one of the reasons, I won't say one of the reasons for that, one of the outcomes of that was that we didn't dishearten the schools that were meeting challenges that we weren't adept at helping them through in the main meeting. We were able to talk about the trends in performance, but we didn't have to say, Red Schoolhouse 2 was 20 points behind, and they ought to be. We were able to have different kinds of conversations to be able to get to that. So we've discussed the data in a number of different ways. I want to, in summarizing our process for DAS-REMI, I want to remind people that those very specific measurements of what we're looking at for improvement across the year are in the DAS-REMI that we're going to get next. It's not going to be at one page. It's going to be all of those measurements, and I think probably folks are most recently familiar with them in the superintendent's evaluation. Every row that we score in the superintendent's evaluation is a measurement from the DAS-REMI. That's where those rows come from. So every year that we modify the DAS-REMI, we have to not modify how we are evaluating the superintendent. And those rows of performance are the cumulative summary of what all the struggling and achieving schools are doing. And we do have lines, I don't have it in front of me, but we do have areas where we talk about where we're going to make improvement or where we're going to accelerate achievement in different places. So using that as a segue, the next steps are the team is going to look at the DAS-REMI as it is and say, these are all the things that we think we need to measure this year. What do you think, committee? And that's what's coming to us next. And then after we say, yeah, we think those are all of the important things to measure, you haven't missed anything to measure, we sign off, then it goes to the board. And once it's approved by the board, those are the marching orders for the things that we're supposed to do this year. Dr. Howard Hall has a comment.
Yes, and we also have to consider our Title I schools are required to write Title I plans. And I know that it's been combined with the SIP, the School Improvement Plan, because with those Title I plans, you have to be mandated through the federal guidelines. So
that's correct.
The program managers, we have to read through those. I was a program manager. You have to make sure that all those components are there before it's uploaded to the state. So they have Title I plans, they have this School Improvement Plan, and one thing about the Title I plan is based on data and budget. Every penny that's spent must align with the data and those components of that plan as well. I just thought I'd mention that.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Mr. Moss.
Sorry. Going back to SIP, I didn't know what SIP meant. I was thinking of this. Do we only refer to that for the underperforming schools, or does every school have some kind of school improvement plan?
So every school is required to
Good.
upload a SIP, a school
Yeah.
improvement plan now,
Right.
to the portal. And to Dr. Howard Hall's point, yes, thank goodness the state finally saw fit that there is one now and they are combined. But our Title I schools do have to allow those program managers to be a part of that. But everyone has to complete that same plan and go through that needs assessment now.
So one thing I would suggest, I understand why you guys did not want to do that in regular meeting before and everything, but when we get those and we see improvement, I would like to celebrate those schools. I mean, you know, a school that makes improvement, I want to celebrate them. I think we all want to celebrate them. So, you know, I would love to see in our, you know, annual report, you know, 60% of our schools made improvement in these areas. Because that's, you know, that's another positive narrative that we need to get out there.
So the persons in control of that are you and Dr. Watts.
Yeah.
It may be something that you may want to do is to look at the last few DAS REMIs and look at the reporting schedule. And you'll see that there was a time where most things were at regular meeting, and what wasn't at
Understand,
regular meeting
understand.
went to informal. I know. I'm just going to say it on tape so that people know.
I understand.
Okay, all right.
I'm
So
I'm church right now. Go ahead.
So, you know, for those who may not know this, you know, that schedule that Mr. Feliciano just went over that says this is when we're going to report the different things. The categories are, as you mentioned, superintendent's note, informal meeting, regular meeting. What's the other thing?
Executive summary, district level reports, or cabinet reports that we provide.
Thank you. Executive summary, district level, or cabinet level reports. And those are often like the best. The executive summaries really get into the data analysis in a succinct way. But you have the superintendent and the chair and the other board officers can look at that schedule and look at the reports that are done in regular meeting and say, hey, I think some of these that are informal, I would like them in regular. I think some of them that are superintendent's notes, I want them in. You guys can do that because that's what's coming to us next in the DAS REMI. So whatever it is that you want to see more light on, then y'all put that in the reporting schedule. Now, the domino effect is you're going to have all these longer meetings, which is okay. We all show up to work. But I think some of those changes were made for efficiency. Some of those changes were made to really focus on the content that the public wants to see versus the stuff that's just governance that we want to see internally. But we'll just look to see how you all organize those reports at our next meeting because you have that opportunity. We have had a good meeting, y'all.
Great meeting.
Awesome. Is there anything else from the team that you want the committee to know?
That's
Everybody?
good.
Everybody's good?
They've been writing a lot of notes. So.
All right. Okay, so action items for today. There is an equity subcommittee meeting on August 29th, and I was about to ride your coattails on that comment, who benefits from all this information that we gather, because I think that the equity component is there. That subcommittee, for those, for a reminder, is a committee built into this one. And so we alternate our meetings between Board Accountability and Equity. That's August 29th at the same time. The DAS REMI draft is slated to be coming back to committee in November, but may come back earlier. And some of the actions of staff over the next few months is going to be the smoothing of Board Accountability Committee, the way forward, and DAS REMI documents and information via their online presence and communications so that they're more easily digested by a greater number of folks. That's what we're working on. Did I miss anything? Awesome.
I want to say one thing about the equity.
Yes, so Mrs. Hall will make a few comments about her plans for equity, and I will leave closing comments to Dr. Watts.
Dr. Watts's number 2 priority on the transformation of our underperforming schools, that will be the focus of the Equity Committee for this school year. Trying to figure out how we infuse support and resources to meet the needs of those underperforming schools. And I will say the one thing, Dr. May, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it, but I feel the one thing that happened from last year that is so beneficial is that we're getting some trained paras into classrooms. And I was going to ask Mr. Ray, do you have kind of a number of where we ended? I know we were talking about the need to train them and all, but how many extra paras do we have planned for next week going into our underperforming schools?
Yes, we started that hiring process. I would actually have to check Ms. Hall. I don't really have that number, but I know we
Okay.
have increased it. I just don't want to say exactly what that number is, and I can get that number to you.
Okay, all right, well, just the fact that that's happened, that's thrilling to me, and a big step forward for us. So those I want to see what's operational, how we get from all the talk into the operations, and to me, that was a big operational change. So hopefully we'll be able to work hand in hand with goal number 2 in helping our underperforming schools get support and the resources that they need. So.
Absolutely. So in closing, it's simply a reiteration of what Board Member Hoskins Brown has shared. The pieces are there. The pieces of a strong accountability system are there. What I am learning today is that we just need to refine and support our efforts to simplify and communicate that in a way that people can digest and use it, which I do believe the work, like there's a path forward for doing that. I also look at this in terms of coherence. So we talked a lot today about DOS, Remy. I was excited to hear that school improvement plans come up. Those two things can talk to each other. We can crosswalk those. The piece that didn't come up, my evaluation came up, but these things should also be cascaded from my evaluation down to every single employee. It's when we have collective ownership is when we will begin to move the dial forward. It can't just be the board. It can't just be the superintendent. It can't just be cabinet. The last piece that I'll offer is just a reminder that, again, we're looking at lagging indicators. I tend to think of it, again, to simplify it as the autopsy, right? The year has already taken place, and this is what the impact of the year. So balancing these types of communications with staff and with schools around what are the leading indicators, what are we seeing boots on the ground today, using iReady, looking at attendance data, looking at discipline data to make real-time adjustments, will give us a clearer picture of what the autopsy is going to be. We should already know what these numbers are going to be at the end of the year if we're tracking and making adjustments along the way. So just keeping that balance, that delicate balance between this, the DOS Remy has already happened. What are we looking at today that allows us to pivot and turn and make adjustments so that we don't get to the end and realize that we didn't do as well as expected? So it'll be my goal as a superintendent to bring a balance to those conversations.
Thank you, everyone, for a really, really productive meeting. Look forward to the next one, and have a great evening.
Yes, ma'am.